The time is 6 o'clock. I'm calling to order a regular meeting of the City Council of the City of Sunset Valley, Texas for Tuesday, May 16th, 2023. Appreciate all the folks that are attending tonight for some of the agenda items that will come later in our agenda. Just as a note, before we start public comments, there is one comment on Open Town Hall that came in a little bit later this afternoon if you didn't get a chance to see it. It's regarding agenda item number 9, which is one of the items for consent, but we may want to review that one before approving it. With that, I'll open up for public comments. So anybody who wishes to speak at this time, please step up to the podium and state your name and address, and you can make your statement. And of course, we'll have public comments for later agenda items as well. All right, seeing that there are no public comments, we're going to move on to item number 3, which is the Community and Economic Development Committee Quarterly Report. And staff, or Wanda, do you want to take this one? Yeah? I can take that one. Okay, great.
Okay, we can start with our goals, and they're not all, you got to kind of skip down to each page. So our first goal was, we are talking about the resiliency of the Sunset Valley and city facilities, and we had started with the process of looking at City Hall as a community center. And also with the freeze and such, we also were looking at the resiliency as far as generators, et cetera. And so if you can zip down to the, yeah, there we go. Wow, I can't read that. Can you make that just a little bit bigger there? Okay. So the second freeze actually rolled things along a lot quicker with the City Hall needed to be remodeled. And so as you can see, we have new flooring, new walls, and we're getting a new kitchen, and that is going to be a little more, it will facilitate events better. So I think that will be a lot better. We also had the little library nook and such. We also realized that we needed to have the office space back. So we are going back to having offices there. At one time, we thought we could do the entire City Hall area back there, including the office space, but that's not to be. So those are the things that have happened. We are still looking at the generator and the elevator, which is kind of on the second goal. And so we probably need some insight from the council as far as how to deal with that. We also looked at, one of the great things on our CED committee is we have a former Austin Energy employee and ERCOT employee. And so he is very knowledgeable on energy. And so he helped get together a session with Enchanted Rock Energy Company. And we talked about different options for energy generation and resiliency. And I believe you might have attended that meeting. And so yes, and the chief attended that meeting. And so there are some things that I'm not sure if there has been any follow-up discussion. So at this point, I think the CED committee probably needs some direction if we want to continue to pursue a generator and other resiliency type of things. Also included in that is the second thing is an elevator. Up on the second floor here is a big storage space, and we have, like, the Arts Commission uses storage, and other areas probably need some storage. But to get up there is a very steep little staircase, and so it's not very safe to get up there to carry any heavy items. So if that were to be really looked at as a storage area, we should install an elevator to lift that, just a simple elevator. So again, that will need some feedback from council on the direction to do that. And then the third one was to look at arranging some meetings with our retail centers on some openings that are occurring in our shopping centers. With the closing of Bye Bye Baby, and the Bed Bath & Beyond, that we were going to have some significant retail space open. So there's some thoughts. I'm already getting input from residents that we need a Trader Joe's, or we need a grocery store, or Sprouts, or something like that. So, so we are planning to pull together a meeting with Dr. Ramirez, with the leasing center managers, and see what we can do as a city to support these businesses coming to Sunset Valley. Those are the major goals. The things that we have accomplished, the events that we have accomplished was the Winter Solstice event, along with the Arts Commission. We also did a volunteer appreciation and the Spring Fling event. So we've had some busy community events. Questions, thoughts?
Any questions? Councilor Rosengarten?
I'll give you a quick analysis of the elevator.
Yeah.
Too expensive. It's better to get a storage shed than it is an elevator, trust me.
I think that we probably need to do that cost-benefit analysis.
I think one thought just I had is whether we can have staff do a summary of what we estimated cost would be for both the generator, because it's not just necessarily the generator, but it's also the hookup, that had to be installed. That's probably the major thing, and then
Yes.
we either have the portable generator or we would have to purchase like a new generator. But I think if we could provide that back as a staff report or an update in our staff reports, just as to give council an idea of what the cost would be. So
I think that would be really good. I think if this center were to be used as a shelter at some point, then we would need something like that. So I think that's a discussion point that we have to have. So
Yeah, we'll have a staff report prepared by Chief, the Director of Public Works. We'll all put input into it because it deals with all departments, both for City Hall as a potential shelter, and do we want to have a generator specific for City Hall? Also, just talking with the Public Works Director, if that mezzanine up there where a lot of the HVAC systems are, if that really is a good place for storage. And I think our initial reaction is it's not really the best place for storage, and then to invest in an elevator, but we'll prep all of that in our report. And we do have another project that we're planning for. I think we briefly discussed it at the budget meeting last week, having additional storage by our garage. So that will hopefully address some of our storage.
and the other thing is the digitization of all of our records will be a huge freedom of space that we would have. So
Very much so.
okay.
Yes.
Councilor Mendigas?
So I also have gotten quite a few residents talking about Trader Joe's and quite a bit of excitement around that. And there is a website, Trader Joe's invites people to ask them to come to their community. You can go on the Trader Joe's site and give them locations. I sent them all 3 shopping centers and asked them to come to Sunset Valley. So anybody can do that, and I encourage people to write to Trader Joe's specifically, and if you want to see them, come here and say, please come.
Outstanding. Thank you.
Councilor Young, and then
One
Mayor Pro
thing to
Tem.
consider is that as opposed to a retailer coming into that space, a grocery store does not pay sales tax revenue.
Some, not a lot.
Not very much. So that's one thing to think about in this.
Mayor Pro Tem. And then Councilor Rosengarten.
About the Enchanted Rock, the conversations still go on with that, and it's a big deal. It's not just a generator; it's like a microgrid where we potentially are able to produce electricity when rates are high, and depending on how it's like structured, we could actually make money on that as an energy producer. So the discussions that are going on are just, where do we currently hook up to Austin Energy, and how much are we going to kind of like put onto that grid if it ever does, like if power goes out in the area. So it's if Enchanted Rock goes for, I mean, it is like a multi-year kind of process, because Austin Energy, while nominally like kind of open to it, they're not really, besides like Camp Mabry, which is very much just like its own thing, it doesn't really exist around around Austin to
Right.
have kind of like neighborhoods that are doing their own power. So like HEBs, Buc-ee's, stuff like that, they'll go on their own grid. But, I think we keep our current generator for now.
Austin Energy has already nixed this generator, the microgrid, that was nixed.
That was a nix, okay.
Yeah, no, they said no to that. Where we're at right now is just a portable generator, basically, so.
Yeah, yeah, so I will look for your report, and we'll feed that back to the committee.
I'll keep working on it.
Okay, that's good. Because we will get cut off again.
Hello, Jerry Resto, I'm Development Services Coordinator. I did speak with Austin Energy, and we were able to get the police station moved up to what they call level 2 priority for restoration of service. So obviously level 1 is the highest. That's reserved for the wastewater treatment plant, the water treatment plant, power plants themselves need power, as well as hospitals. So we're on the second tier below that, which is basically for all first responder, fire stations, police stations, EMS stations, et cetera. So your building is now priority 2 for service restoration.
That is outstanding, thank you.
That was a goal from 2 years ago, and really appreciate staff following up on that, and Jerry, your assistance with getting that done. So hopefully that means that we have additional mitigation if that happens again with quick restoration of power. So appreciate that. That's great. Councilmember Rosengarten, did you want to speak as well? Okay, got it. All right. I do want to commend the staff, the committee report, because having the goals there is really useful, and I think it ties in with our planning that we were doing. So I really appreciate that, and it helps us have a discussion and gives direction to staff. So thanks again for putting your report together. Any other questions from council? All right, that's going to take us to agenda item number 4, which is council consideration of agenda items for approval on consent. Councilmember Rosengarten.
I move to approve on consent agenda item number 5, number 6, number 7, number 8, number 9, and number 11.
All right, so the motion is to approve on consent 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 11. Does anybody want to pull any of those items? Mayor Pro Tem?
Number 9, please.
Okay, we'll pull number 9. Any other items that need to be pulled? All right, is there a second for the motion to approve on consent item number 5, 6, 7, 8, and 11?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Medicus. Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. All right, we approved on consent and approval of the minutes from the May 2nd, 2023 regular meeting. Approval of canceling the July 4th, 2023 regular city council meeting for the July 4th holiday. Approval of task order amendment number 3 and number 4 to Home Depot and Ernest Robles Way Road and Sidewalk Improvement Project in an amount of $58,870. An award to the contract to Terracon to complete materials testing for the combined 2022-2023 capital improvements project. And approval of the software as a service agreement with Tyler Technologies for the implementation of Tyler One and ERP Pro 10 financial management suite. With that, I appreciate the engineering team coming out here for that. It was a pretty easy approval, so thank you. And I think what we want to do, rather than moving directly to item number 9, because we do have folks here for the variances, that we'll go to agenda number 10 if council's okay with that, and then we can speak to the variance. All right, great. So we're going to jump forward to agenda item number 10, which is consider act on approval of a watershed development permit with 2 variances for a garden and courtyard at the HUN agency located at 5203 Brody Lane. And we'll begin with a staff introduction to this item.
Sure. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Jerry Restoven, Development Services Coordinator. This case, as the mayor said, is a watershed development permit for the property located at 5203 Brody Lane. The property is the old farmhouse owned by the Weaver family, sometimes known as the Brody Homestead. Its current use is the headquarters for the HAN agency, a marketing and public relations firm. The applicant is seeking to add a new courtyard adjacent to the existing structure, as well as to bring into compliance an existing garden facility that is located on the west side of the building along the Brody frontage, which has some planter boxes raised above the ground. The request would add an additional 4,535 square feet of impervious cover to the site, bringing its total impervious cover up to 30%. The existing property, the existing development has about 23% impervious cover, so this would be an additional 7% impervious cover on top of what is already out there. Of the 4,535 square feet of impervious cover, 1,375 square feet will be actual hard surface. So that would be either the roof of a storage shed that will be located within the courtyard or the pavers of the courtyard itself. The remaining 3,160 square feet of impervious cover will either be decomposed granite or gravel under the existing planter boxes in the garden. The watershed development permit requires the council to approve 2 variances. The first one is from section 150.336 of the Land Development Code to exceed the allowable impervious cover. The allowable impervious cover is 18%. As I said, the existing is 23%, and the proposed with this application will be 30%. The applicant's engineer, which is Garza EMC, has provided a letter which is in your backup that goes through their determination that they have met the findings that are required for a variance. Staff, as well as Gary Freeland from Freeland Turk Engineers, have reviewed that and are in concurrence with their variance letter. The reason that the staff supports this, as well as Mr. Freeland, I believe, is because, one, it is, in the big picture of things, a negligible amount of additional impervious cover. And secondly, the existing pond, which is adjacent to the Doc's backyard facility, which serves the entire larger shopping center development, does have additional capacity within the pond to serve this small amount of additional impervious cover. So it will be treated using the existing biofiltration pond that is already there. The second variance is from section 150.323A of the Land Development Code, which basically requires compliance with the City of Austin Environmental Criteria Manual, specifically with regard to pollutant load. The applicant intends to, as I said, use the existing pond, which was constructed probably around 2007, 2008, maybe the end of 2006. And because the pond does have additional capacity that can serve this impervious cover, retrofitting that pond to bring it into current compliance with the SOS ordinance would be very difficult, if not impossible, without a total rebuild of the pond. In addition to that, you would need a re-irrigation area to spray the water from the pond, and that area simply does not exist on the property or the adjacent shopping center. Staff and Mr. Freeland also recommend approval of this variance, and there is a second variance justification letter in the backup provided by Garza EMC. I believe Mr. Hahn is here from the Hahn Agency and can address the proposed uses of the courtyard. I will not steal his thunder on that one. And with that, I would say that the staff is available for any questions.
Can you bring up the site plan where just to, so we have a point of reference for our discussion for where the new garden's going to be? The site plan, I think, because it kind of details out that front area to the south of the building. Yeah, that one. And just so there's an existing garden food area to the west, right? And this is the. Right.
So this is the existing garden area right here. The planter boxes where you go, there's the grow vegetables there right now. And this is where the new courtyard would go. This is where the new courtyard would go. This is where the existing garden is. This is, of course, the existing parking. This is the pond. And, of course, you got Doc's backyard and the rest of the center in that direction.
Can I ask, because I forgot to look this up in the backup, but I think there's like 2 large trees right in front of the building, if I remember correctly. Are those going to be preserved or are they going to be removed?
Yes, there's no trees being taken out as part of this
Okay.
permit application. The garden, this photo's a little older. The garden area is right here.
And then those trees are the ones right in front that they're not taking those out?
No, they will not.
All right. We'll begin with council questions, and the applicant's here for taking any questions to Mayor Pro Tem.
So I actually run past this place and it looks really nice. Is part of this variance covering the garden, because that's.
Yes, so the garden's already built, it's frankly built without a permit. So this will bring it into compliance.
Okay.
It's been packaged as a part of the application for the courtyard. So
Okay.
both of those are included in all the numbers I just gave you.
Gotcha. So I don't know why my mind doesn't go here when I see these kind of things, but I saw the crushed granite. And again, it looks really nice, but I should know that that is not impervious and whatever. But,
We do have ongoing discussions about what is impervious cover and what is not with regard
Right.
to decomposed granite.
totally.
And I visited the site as well, and for the purposes here of this permit, we are including the entirety, everything in the 4,500 square feet that I told you they're asking for, but as I said, only 1,300 of that 45 square feet is actual hard surface, the pavers, and again, the shed for a small, a roof for a small shed. So we're including the gravel area of the garden, which
Is the majority of it.
it
It
is.
seems
It's
like it's,
3,100 of the 4,500.
yes. Okay, thank you.
Jerry, can you go through the analysis of why we don't consider the granite as pervious?
Generally speaking, what the code allows, it allows exemptions for residential versus commercial. And really what we've been looking at, because this came up as well when we were working on the botanical garden case, is there's kind of two ways to use decomposed granite. One is to prepare a hard base, you know what I mean, beneath it, you know, which generally means it'll last longer, you know, before you have to refresh it. So you dig up some dirt, you lay, you know, something, you know, some gravel, something else, you steamroll it, you compact it, you know, you have this compacted base underneath it, and then you put the decomposed granite on top of that. In other situations, people are just putting decomposed granite on top of the ground, you know what I mean, with minimal amount of
Right.
compacting, some compacting, but, you know, they're hand tamping or you know, a hand roller. And so in those cases, we, and I say we, I'm relatively new here, so on the botanical garden case, we did not count the decomposed granite as impervious cover because they were not putting it under a compacted base.
Okay,
In this case, you know, in the area where there will be some, I think, granite, you know, mixed in with the pavers around the perimeter and whatnot of the proposed courtyard. So we're presuming for the moment that they're going to basically compact the entire area, you know, of the patio, because of course you're putting pavers down, that's how you got to do it, right? And so we're counting that as impervious. I think we're being a little bit overly cautious by counting the gravel underneath the garden boxes on Brody as impervious cover, but you know, either way, they'd be needing a variance because they're already over the 18% that's allowed anyway. So I think we're being, in this case, a little bit cautious, you know what I mean, a little bit conservative, if
Okay.
you will, in what we're counting as impervious cover, but that's
okay.
how we're putting it.
I'd probably like to hear from Han or the engineers about that.
And if you can step up to the microphone, and you have to press it to turn it on at the base, and it'll be a red light to indicate that it's actually on. Oh, does that one require the? Okay, that might be already on.
Good evening, Council. I'm Jeff Hahn, owner of the Hahn Marketing and Public Relations.
Right, so what I was interested in is it a compacted base that y'all, for the whole site?
It is.
Okay.
We had a landscape architect who his advice was that compacted bases with peat gravel or decomposed granite are not considered impervious, and so we went ahead with the project and then found out later that he was mistaken.
Councilmember Young.
I had a couple of questions for staff, and they're kind of bigger picture ones. I don't have any objections to the variances. But in the engineer's report, it says that currently we're at 122% capacity for suspended solids removal and 113% of the required volume. How much, if at all, does adding this on affect those numbers?
Gary, do you know the answer to that? I'm sorry, Councilmember, I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Thank you. The overall impact is really negligible. I believe the 4,500 feet equates to like 0.7% overall increase in the impervious cover. And the fact that the water quality treatment system was over-designed years ago is a plus. And I think they anticipated over time that there might be small expansions like this. So they were basically anticipating that this might happen. The overall impact on anything out there is negligible.
Do we need to be conscious of any kind of further variances and how they could affect this? And that's a question for staff.
I think, Councilmember, what we would do is, we did analyze as I said, Garza, the engineering firm hired by the applicant, provided us with the, basically the site plan for the original shopping center. You know what I mean? They had all the calculations in there, all the numbers. It's about it was included in your, I think about a 60-page document. And then they reran the numbers with the additional impervious cover, from this. And that's how we were able to determine that they have the additional capacity. We would basically go through that exercise for any project that came in like this. And so, as Mr. Freeland said, most ponds are built larger than they need to be. Part of it's just, sometimes that's just how you build it, you know what I mean? Because that's what the land conforms to. Or as Mr. Freeland said, you do it because you anticipate, something like this happening. But on every case basis where people want to add impervious cover, this site is actually separate from the shopping center. Legally it's a separate tract, but the pond serves, water doesn't know lot lines. And so the pond serves, the entire development. It was designed to serve the entire development. So we would look every time someone came in and made sure that there was still capacity. Obviously at a certain point you would say, no, there's no more capacity there. You know what I mean? And we would have to consider whether, to grant that variance at that time or not. But it makes it easier for us knowing that the capacity is there. And we're not saying that the runoff is not going to be detained and treated.
And just out of curiosity, how has, like, let's say, for example, during the Memorial Day floods in 2016, did that pond overflow?
I do not recall in any of the histories of the flooding events here in Sunset Valley. The pond at the Homestead Shopping Center has functioned incredibly well, and it's a great example of a wet pond and over there. So I've never seen it overflow to the point that we're causing issues of any kind.
Okay, wonderful. That's good to know. That didn't get called out in the report what the possible effects were, so I wanted to bring that out.
Mayor Pro Tem.
We start off with the lot 2 going from 23.5 to 31% impervious cover. Is it really we should care about the number that was given, but it's only going to increase it by 0.7%.
The delta, yeah, it's increasing by 7% for the Han site.
Right. Why was that kind of like pulled out there for lot 2?
So when I believe it was the Brody Event Center, Lot 1 and Lot 2, it was one legal lot at that time, or it was developed when they came to council as one space, right? It was the barn and the house, right. And that was approved by council in 2012. So now it's a separate legal lot. Lot 2 is now 5203 Brody Lane that is now owned by the Han agency. And so that's why these calculations are specific to that lot, to lot 2, which is 5203 Brody.
Okay.
But it's still, again, the pond we're talking about serves.
It was engineered to bring all of that to.
Yes, to the home, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Mayor Pro Tem.
I could make a motion?
You could.
Okay. Which I'm terrible at, and I'm out of practice. Here we go. Okay. Motion that we approve a watershed development permit with 2 variances for a garden and courtyard at Han Agency located at 5203 Brody Lane. And there's no other notes or changes. With the findings, with the 5 findings.
Just a clarification. Do we need it to be in the city engineer's letter? It said contingent upon.
Yes, everything is wrapped up except for they're still waiting for what they call an exception letter from TCEQ, and so I think that the council can take the vote now, but before the staff issues the final approval, we'll be sure that we have that letter from TCEQ.
So, contingent upon TCEQ exemption.
Contingent upon approval from TCEQ.
A motion to approve the watershed development permit with 2 variances for garden and courtyard at the Han Agency located at 5203 Brody, contingent on approval from TCEQ with the findings as part of the staff backup. Is there a second for that motion? Councilmember Gill? And That'll open up for discussion. Any further questions from council before we open up for the public to make any comments? So at this time, if any members of the public wish to speak to this item, please step up to the microphone and make your statement.
Melissa Gonzalez, 26 Street. I don't have a problem per se, except for that I wish there was more specificity about this in Councilmember Johnson's motion, because if it's just a jump, then there's precedent for just a jump. And that bugs me a little bit. You know, I just feel like saying it because it's dotting an I and crossing a T. And if there was a way to make it more specific to this, I'd be more comfortable, because I don't have a problem with this. I think we have to maybe address some of the landscaping. The reason that we have the compacted is because of the cars parking on things is my thing. And so that's where the exception is for me, is that we're not parking cars on it. And so that's where my distinction is, where I'm not complaining and wanting to note, you know, as to why we're doing this and it's okay. Because if we were doing the same amount and we were increasing parking, I'd be a lot more uncomfortable, you know, because of the quality of the runoff, and then I would feel like we were not in the spirit of the evenness of the 18%, right? Because they're just saying that it's done. Because you can look at where they're doing ponds and you can still see the black, you know, where a lot of the runoff is. And they say it's treated, but the reality is sometimes a bit different. So I just want to say I would be a little bit more comfortable if we would say something about that this is not a parking area, this is a garden area. Some kind of little exception would make me rest just a little bit easier in terms of precedent. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Council, any discussion? Mayor Pro Tem?
It was my thinking as well that this is not a parking area. It's not going to be as compacted. So, you know, you're kind of seeing that water will kind of go through it, is depending on like what's underneath there. But, and again, the quality of the water that goes through. I think LDC rewrites are the next thing on P&E's list, right? So there you go.
All right, any further questions or discussion from council?
No.
And thank you for your comments. I appreciate that. All right, all those in favor of approving the watershed development permits contingent upon TCEQ approval with the 2 variances for garden and courtyard of the Han Agency located at 5203 Brody with the findings, please say aye.
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 All opposed say nay. All right, motion passes. And thank you for attending tonight's meeting, and looking forward to you know, seeing the new garden area there as well. So appreciate it. All right, council, that'll take us to.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Also, I love the, you guys have a sign on the Brody side that it's like it's not really a sign, it's more like a piece of art. It's this metal, what would you call that? And then it's kind of like cut. Sorry, this is.
Yeah, Mayor Pro Tem, we had a piece of art installed as a block for the heating, the air conditioning units, and it says Sunset Valley on it.
Yes.
I love that.
That's right,
love,
I've seen that.
you know, sometimes we have retailers that say that they're in Austin, and I get why they say it. But I like to see the pride of Sunset Valley, like written on the side of our businesses. So
We
thank you.
envision it like the ATX piece of artwork down to Whole Foods on 5th and Lamar, and imagine that to be a place where people can come and take selfies.
That's right. Very good.
Yeah, and if you're, just as a note, one of the things that council is going to be looking at next year is redevelopment of the Brody corridor itself, and so council is very interested in making that a more walkable, integrated, but also improving the lighting around there. So I know you guys are right on the edge of that corridor, and you certainly would welcome your engagement in that process over the next 12 months as we look at some initial planning that we're going to be hopefully beginning next year as well. So
Yeah, thank you for that invitation, Mayor. You have my full support. We would love that to be a great extension to the public area, and we'd be very happy to be a partner in that process.
thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Right,
Hope
council.
y'all come by sometime. Thank you.
Oh, Councilmember Rosengart, you got one more?
I was going to say, when you're doing your taste testing, we all volunteer.
Oh, yeah.
I'll definitely provide public notice. Thank you.
All right, Council, that'll take us to our last agenda item, which is going back to agenda number 9. Consider act on authorizing the release of a request for bids for the asbestos remediation and demolition of residential structures at 6107 and 6401 Brody Lane. And then, since you pulled this one, Mayor Pro Tem, do you want to start off with leading with any questions you have to staff?
Sure. I don't always have to have good reasons, I think, but I'm not ready to let the Galt House go. I want to live to fight that another day. I have no problem with asbestos mitigation on the other. I'm so terrible with these addresses. Like my house number is 1. You know, so
It's a good thing.
Yeah. And even with it's unfortunate that it's a house that is in such good shape, but it's just not what we were going to do with that property. So I just wanted to kind of pull the Galt house out of this. I don't know if we want to go forward with the asbestos on it and just let demolition go.
I was talking to staff about this. This is obviously just a request for bids, right? You know, it's not saying that we're moving forward with that. It comes later when we get the bids back and we're going to be reviewing it for cost. One thing that we could do is potentially shape the RFP to say, give us an option for just the 6701 or option 2 being both houses, right? So we can consider the cost of each, right? You know, either doing just the 6107 or doing both and having the respondees so that if council decides only to move forward with 61, we still have that, but we can also see, you know, if there's both houses and council desires to move forward with both at that time, you know, that'll be 2 months from now when we get those bids back.
Yeah.
But staff, we can give you a chance to give an update as well.
Yeah, so Public Works Department, our superintendent and director were quoted at, you know, anywhere from $200 to $300 per square foot. You know, Carolyn and I did the math. It's at least $500,000 just to get the house to be able to be used up to code to be used by the public. $500,000. So.
It's gone up since we even posted this agenda. Look at that. Okay, well, so as we've done with previous things, even if we go for the RFB on this, that for future reference, that is not like I'm all for it. Will come back, I know, but I'm just saying that yeah, I probably will have more words to say on it later.
So good, Councilmember Rosengart and then Councilmember Young.
What I did is I posted on Austin Real Estate Association asking any other realtors who might have dealt with a property where a house is sitting on the property and the owner wanted the property to be moved, and noting that the property has been found to have asbestos, probably in the flooring tiles. I did it twice and I received no responses. So nobody wanted to tackle it, nobody dealt with it. I'm sure somebody dealt with it somewhere, but nobody wanted to tackle it. And then I called TML and I discussed it with TML, and TML said, and I gave a scenario. I said, if we sold the house for $1 and whoever bought it simply removed it from our land, and they then dealt with the asbestos work, et cetera. Because as we know, until the asbestos is compromised, meaning agitated and so on, only then is it a health hazard. As long as it's intact and not disturbed, then all is fine. TML said you cannot sell a property that is owned by taxpayers basically by giving it away, $1. However, if the asbestos abatement would be so great that it's worth it to give it away for $1, that might be said. But they were also going to do some more research. I asked them to check with other cities that might have gone through this. I got no response back. He said he was going to check again, and I have not heard anything as of today's date. Thank you.
Councilmember Young.
I think I'm with the Mayor Pro Tem on this, that I would like to see us wait until we have a plan for what we're gonna do with that property before we tear it down or do anything else with it. And we don't have a plan. We don't know what we're gonna do with it yet. We have a lot of things on our plate, and I think it can be, since there, as far as I understand, there's no health concerns as long as it's just sitting there. I don't think there's any reason to move on it yet. I'd like to see us have a plan of what we're gonna do with that property before we do anything.
Councilmember Medicus?
So I thought we talked about this before, about getting a price for doing one versus two and being able to compare. Is it cheaper if we did them both at the same time versus, isn't that where we're going? And the other thing is, if the house is sitting there empty, is it possible for us to use it for storage since we have all these storage issues? So I'm just wondering, we're not tearing up the floor if we're going to store documents there or something, or store things there, but storage seems to be an issue. We're looking at potential additional storage maybe in the Public Works garage, but that's going to be a while. Could we utilize that space in the meantime?
Well, just addressing a couple of things. We have talked about this a couple times. This was reviewed by two committees, and both of them recommended demolishing both houses. That's why it's in the current form. It doesn't mean that we can't, amend the plan for what the RFP is to say, give us options. At least I think that's true. We can come back and say, is there a cost benefit to doing both at once? Or just what the cost of a single one is. So I think that's up to us. If we want to only go forward with one, we probably won't have as much information, that council can use to weigh that. But the way it's in this current form is because it did go through the two committees, and they both recommended demolishing both houses. But it could be that we have other uses for it, as long as it's not, like we said, disturbed. The asbestos is not causing any issues. I would recommend that we have the option in the RFP so that we can reevaluate based on the cost that we get from the bids, and also just weigh in that the fact that committees have looked at this and that at least we have a response back for their recommendations. It doesn't hurt us to get that information, so that would be what I'd like to see, but it's, if we want to only do one at this time, that's certainly, we can make that motion or how we'll proceed. So. Mayor Pro Tem.
Sure. Yeah, again, I was kind of, it says RFP right there in the beginning, but every time I read this, I feel like I just skipped past the fact that it was RFP because we had talked about it before. I thought that process had been started, or at least like initial talks. So, yeah, again, I go out to talk to those people and make it, ask for like the two different kind of one or both or whatever. But, and then also, didn't I suggest using this? It's using it as storage? And everybody's like, no, that's a bad idea. Anyway, so I don't think anyone else, did you turn your mic on? Were you gonna say something else?
I was gonna suggest that we get options. We get both options for this,
Yeah.
and then we can decide.
So I'm happy to start a motion on that. So I motion we authorize the release of a request for bids for asbestos remediation, demolition of residential structures at 6107 and 6401 Brody Lane combined, and then also a bid for 6107? Is that the?
Just 6107.
Just 6107 by itself.
All right. Is there a second for the motion? Councilmember Young seconds. All right, and any further questions for staff? Staff, is that reasonable that we can do that? I'll open up for any members of the public that wish to speak before we take a vote. All right, all those in favor of approving the release of the request for bids, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. All right, the motion passes. Not quite beating our record, but we're out. I think it's the clock. The clock actually, is what assisted us. And just as a note, we will have a pretty full agenda for our first June meeting. We have a number of items that are coming up for that, so not planning on a working session, but that's likely going to be a longer meetings just in preparation for council and staff. But we're also going to get a draft agenda out so that you guys have plenty of time to review ahead of time. And if there's a motion to adjourn at this time, I think we're ready for that. Councilor Medigas,
So move.
is there a second? It was approved on consent.
Kyle's gone.
Do you have any questions? Okay, yeah, we're moving forward with it, yeah. All right, all those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
I'll second.
All right, all opposed, say nay. All right, we are adjourned at 6:45 PM. Yeah, staff is very appreciative of the software.